Good afternoon. As you know, I'm a 28-year Army vet, and I've served in such places as Somalia, Jordan, Iraq, and Bosnia. And I am a PTSD survivor. Now I say survivor because every day for 365 days out of the year, 22 American soldiers will commit suicide each and every day. And you can make a difference. We can make a difference. As future counselors, we can know the best form of treatment for an individual. Would you like to learn how to do that today?
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, next slide. All right, at the end of class today, these are our 3 learning outcomes. The first is define what PTSD is, but more specifically, how it relates to a military member who has served in a combat zone. Number 2, the second, is how to identify the symptoms that's being exposed, that's being presented by an individual, and to know what the treatment options are for a military member. Then once you know the definition, once you know what the symptoms and treatment plan is, then you can devise a specific intervention for that individual. In this case, I'd like to welcome Scotty to our group and to our class today.
How you doing, Scott?
And he has agreed to be our live case study at the very, very end of our teaching demonstration today. And we'll give you some time at that time to go through it. Okay, next. All right. First, I'd like to do is go through the homework that we asked you to perform prior to class today. I'm sure that you completed the quiz and you did your reading assignment on the symptoms and treatments of PTSD within the military. So let's go through our quiz. And as a reminder, for each question that you get right, you get a green token. And once you get that green token, you can cash that in anytime during class. For a quiz, you didn't like your score, you can turn in the token to raise that score up, whether it's a quiz, whether it's a research paper, or whether it's a test. So Dave, what about the first question for us? How'd you do?
Question 1, according to empirical data, what is considered the best form of counseling therapy to treat military veterans with PTSD? A, behavioral therapy, B, cognitive behavioral therapy, C, existential therapy, or D, gestalt integrated therapy? And I chose B, cognitive behavioral therapy. It seemed like everything that I read showed that about 75% of people that use cognitive behavior therapy had success overcoming their symptoms.
Fantastic. Well done, Dave. It's a green token for you.
Yeah.
Well done. Okay, great. We're on a roll here, Clarence. What about number 2?
People can be exposed and experience PTSD in what types of settings? A, abusive marriage. B, vehicle accidents. C, war zone area. And D, which I chose, all of the above.
Well done. That's exactly correct, Clarence. All of these people can be exposed to PTSD in all of those situations. All right, we're 2 for 2. All right, Aaron, what about number 3?
Gender, ethics, social status, and economic status play a major part in those who are exposed to PTSD. True or false? And that is absolutely false. It doesn't matter if they're male or female or their status.
Crosses all those lines, doesn't it? Well done. Well done. All right, the pressure is on, Marilyn. We're 3 for 3. Can you bring us to 4 out of 4?
I'll do my best.
Okay.
The criteria for diagnosing PTSD in the 5th edition of Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders is when a person is exposed to one or more events that involve death or threatened death, actual or threatened serious injury, or threatened sexual violation. And that is true. I mean, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a military person. It could be any walk of life that could have experienced one of these situations.
Absolutely.
So that's true.
So it can be exposed to,
Yep.
could have an individual that they knew,
Mm-hmm.
in any one of those 3 situations.
Absolutely.
They can do that. Well done. All right, you got that. One last one. All right, Dave, let's go to you.
What is considered one of the best interventions for treating PTSD? Talk and write about the event, breathing techniques to ease anxiety, replace negative memory by thinking of something positive, change your attitude or behavior about the details surrounding an anxiety, take medication to balance a person's neurotransmitters, meditation, prayer, and greater spiritual awareness, or what I chose, all of the above, taking an integrative approach. Seems like it's always going to be the best way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well done. 5 for 5. Great job, guys, on your homework last night. Now, to drive the point home about what PTSD is, Marilyn gave us the classic definition of it. I have a short video presentation I'd like you to watch and pay particular attention to.
I'm Dr. Elizabeth Hoagie, a psychiatrist at Massachusetts General Hospital, speaking on behalf of the Anxiety Disorders Association of America. Today I'm going to talk about PTSD in the military. Post-traumatic stress disorder, commonly called PTSD, is an anxiety disorder, an illness that people may develop after a traumatic event. It makes you feel stressed out and fearful, even after the threat of danger is gone. It affects your life and the people around you. It can occur after experiencing or witnessing a life-threatening event, including combat, a terrorist attack like 9/11, personal assault or abuse, or the sudden death of a loved one. About 30% of the men and women who have spent time in war zones experience PTSD. 1 in 5 military members who have returned from Iraq or Afghanistan report symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, or major depression. It's not uncommon for someone with PTSD to develop other mental health problems during or after deployment, including depression, suicidal thoughts, substance abuse, drug use, and other anxiety disorders. Men who are exposed to high levels of combat are significantly more likely to experience acute stress and symptoms of PTSD. Women in the military are at high risk for exposure to traumatic events, especially during war. They're also at greater risk of exposure to sexual harassment, sexual assault, and rape than men. A recent study of children with parents deployed in Iraq or Afghanistan showed elevations in anxiety and depression linked to length of deployment and the psychological stress of the parent at home. And their symptoms usually persist after the deployed parent comes home. If you are a veteran and you feel that you can't take it anymore or feel suicidal, please call 911. If you're suffering from these kinds of symptoms, talk to your doctor about treatment. If you have loved ones who have been exposed to combat and other trauma and are having these kinds of symptoms, encourage them to seek help. You can find helpful tips and more resources online.
To watch the other segments in this video series, or
All right, we'll go to our next slide. The key point from the video, which I want to stomp on if I could, is the definition of PTSD. Again, it's those 3 things: being exposed to injury, death, or sexual violation. Okay? Either yourself or through someone else. Move to the next slide, please. PTSD affects the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being of an individual. Here is a shot of an individual before they deployed, a shot of an individual, the same person, during the deployment and afterwards, and how they looked a few weeks to a month afterwards as well. You can see the anguish that person is carrying around just by looking at him. Our hope is to create a 4th column on how a person can look after a successful treatment plan with a specific intervention. Now, if you could look at the next handout, is the PTSD checklist. This one right here, which you're given to review from last week. This is given to an individual. And it can be administered by that person. self-administered, to determine the level of PTSD, the symptoms that an individual has, prior to starting counseling. There are several measurement tools that a psychologist can use. This one has been used over 20 years and has very strong empirical data that has been proven reliable for over 20 years to show as a pre and a post test. So if they score 50 points or above, they definitely are experiencing PTSD symptoms. And we hope at the end of a successful therapy program with specific interventions that that score will go down below. And of course, what Dave mentioned earlier, the success rate for CBT therapy is over
75%.
75%. This is a good indicator of what that could be. All right, next. These are the symptoms of PTSD, and in your reading, you're asked to find out of those, what are the top 5? Now, of course, an individual does not have to experience all 5 of those, but likely will have 1 or 2 or 3 of those symptoms that could be manifested. So let's see how well you did on determining the top 5 from your reading. Answers up there, there's only 5 that are the top. Okay? Dave, what do you think?
Flashbacks and memories of the event.
Flashbacks and memories. Well done. Excellent. That is correct. Very good. All right, Marilyn,
Well,
give me the second one.
I thought one of them was poor judgment.
Uh-huh.
They could start, drinking alcohol, substance abuse, maybe even a risky lifestyle change. So their judgment is just off a little bit on
Mm-hmm.
what they do.
Not making the best choices for them.
Exactly.
Covering up their symptoms with something negative.
yep.
Very well done. All right,
I want-
let's give Marilyn
Yeah,
a
there
hand
you
for that one. You guys are racking up those tokens.
Alrighty.
Okay, Aaron, what about the third one?
Lack of communication. It's
Mm-hmm.
definitely one of them.
Communication skills. You think they talk too much or not enough?
Not enough.
Not enough. Probably masking it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right? Probably in denial. Well done. Let's give you another token. Okay. Clarence, can you give us a fourth one?
Lack of motivation,
Oh, yes.
not wanting to do anything.
Okay. Motivation. Absolutely correct, Clarence. Well done. See, you guys are your reading. Okay, sorry about that. We'll get you another one. Here you go, Clarence. Oh, you don't have to.
Chase on the floor.
All right. And Marilyn, can you give us a fifth one?
I think anxiety. They're nervous, maybe they can't sleep well, maybe a little jumpy, but they've got symptoms of anxiety.
Absolutely. Well,
Thank you.
so those are the top 5. Well done. Okay, next slide, please. Now, you have an individual that's experiencing these type of symptoms. Hopefully, they're going to seek out a form of treatment. Okay, and there's 4 that are suggested. In some cases, an individual might receive all 4 of these. Others might be weaned off after a period of time and just have 1. All right, so let's look at each one. And Marilyn, any comments on those 4?
Yeah, I know medications sometimes will help with the anxiety, like they can't sleep, so they'll get something for the depression and maybe for sleep aids. So I know medications can be a big help on that.
Very good. I like your definition of how that could be applied.
All right.
All right, Aaron, what about you? Anyone you wanted to talk about?
Experimental, such as like war games, video games, war that mirrors their traumatic experience, and hopefully the more that they play that game, it will reduce their condition.
You bet. You know, at first it was thought that you wouldn't want to remember that. Don't expose them to those same memories again. Now they're saying, no, the more times you expose it, the less anxiety eventually that they'll experience over the long term. So by playing those video war games, they can kind of see what the outcomes were and then shift the blame not upon them, but basically onto other things. Well done, Aaron. All right. Clarence, what about you?
Man's best friend is his dog.
Okay, a service animal. Absolutely. Having a dog there that a person can take care of, shift that responsibility onto something else, providing service, and that will help them overcome and soothe their own experience by having something else to take care of. Well done.
Good job.
All right, Dave, what about you?
The therapy sessions, before in the quiz we were talking about the cognitive behavior therapy sessions, something to help them talk it out and see a positive in something that was bad.
Absolutely. Well done. Okay, good job. And something to reiterate, again, according to empirical studies, whether it's an individual CBT session or a group therapy, individuals who are exposed to group therapy first, and then specifically onto individual therapies perform better. They have a higher success rate in a group setting, in this particular type of setting. All right, well done. Okay, let's talk about another handout that I gave you, dealing with interventions. Okay, PTSD interventions. And there are 5 of those. It was given to you for your reading prior to class. And these are the 5 interventions that have proven to be the most successful. The key is identifying which one for a particular person. Okay? And I know you've read through those, you understand that. So the first one about critical incidents, it's recording them, having a journal writing, exposure-based therapy, having them replay that event as often as possible to talk about it, cognitive restructuring, remapping that experience so it's a more positive outcome, shifting the blame away from them. It's not their fault. Remapping that event so they're thinking about that one and replacing it. Coping skills, meditation, relaxation, role reversal, and playing that out differently. And then the last is spiritual development. Okay, now that we understand the symptoms and the 4 treatment plans, let's look at a real case scenario. We've asked Scotty to come here to talk to us about his experience. And we'll get a chance to ask him some questions. Scotty, again, thank you for coming.
Thanks, man. Just tell them a story.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, yeah. So it really goes back to Somalia, Mogadishu. A lot of you guys might have seen that movie, Black Hawk Down. So it was all about a task force that I belonged to, Task Force Ranger. And we're basically going in to get this head bad guy, this clan, this Adid. And we'd gotten some information that he was at this place called the Olympic Hotel, which was quite a ways from where our base encampments were. So we brought up several helicopters and a convoy, and it really was only supposed to take about an hour, plus the movement to make it all happen. But then things just went really bad. We got out there, and the first guy started to come out of the helicopter to come down, and our first aircraft got taken down by an RPG, which is like a rocket. Once I was down, we tried to cover that and still to complete the mission, and then a second helicopter came down. On the process, we just wouldn't have the manpower for that. We brought the manpower really more to just capture this guy, Adid, and so 10th Mountain was back in the rear, and they sent out further convoys, a rescue mission, if you will, to get us out. And between barricades and very, very narrow streets and everything else, it just became quite difficult. And long story short, we lost a lot of guys. Lost about 26 men. By the time we were able to get back to those base encampments, we had over 74 injured. But at the end, we always have this kind of mantra that we don't leave anybody behind, right? So we made every effort to get our dead back and recover our people. And Well, I mean, we even paid for it. We even paid for the people for they get them back. But the problem is a lot of them are coming back in, honestly, body parts. And sometimes they were unrecognizable, burnt pieces of limbs or whatever. And I think the biggest frustration, and I belonged to 10th Mountain, and I got kind of assigned to the mortuary affairs, which are the people that help kind of put those accounts for those bodies and send them home back to their families. And we had more body parts than there were for people. I mean, we had too many hands, too many legs, and so it just came that many of these parts, they didn't even belong to the American soldiers. You know, people are just turning it in for money. I don't think we ever got them all. I think we still left people there. It just, you know, it frustrates you. We went there to help the people, right? They were having a famine. We were trying to make sure that the food was there. It was all profiteering, and in the end, we lost our people's lives, and all for profit once more. We never got those people, and I still struggle with that. It still angers me, and I just, I still kind of deal with it. Sometimes it makes me shake. I can't sleep a lot of times, and I don't know, just things I'm working through. I mean, I don't know what else you want, sir, if that's...
Thank you very much for sharing that. I know that's a personal experience and means a lot to kind of share that with the group. Thank you for coming in today and doing that. I can still see, after all these years, it has an impact.
And it still bugs me.
So I think our class might have a couple of questions, if that's all right.
No, yeah, okay.
What questions might you have? Clarence, you have a question for him?
Yes. What are your primary symptoms of PTSD?
Oh, symptoms, I don't know. They said once I had PTSD. I don't think I really have PTSD. I mean, I don't think that's where I am. I wasn't in the fighting like other people really have, but I do struggle. Like, there's sometimes I don't want to leave the house sometimes, right? There's just days I just don't want to deal with the day. I just want to stay home. I have difficulty talking about this, that's for sure. It's not something that I normally do, and I still kind of have flashbacks of these body parts and things like that. It still causes sleepless nights. So I guess that's, if I have symptoms, I don't know, but those are things I still deal with.
Thank you very much. Erin, you have a question?
Yes. Are you currently in counseling, and do you consider yourself a spiritual person?
A spiritual person. I mean, I believe in God. I don't go to church or anything, but I believe there's a God. Counseling, I don't see a shrink, if that's what you mean. When I got out of the Army, I had to go through the VA, and I did see I guess a shrink or a counselor, if you will, and to determine for PTSD, and I think they had concerns, and as I processed out of the Army, so I dealt with that. But now I've kind of sought looking to kind of better things. I'm trying to get a degree in counseling. I'm hoping that I can help other people by being able to talk through things, and maybe help myself by just kind of working through those things. So
Thank you very much.
So, Scotty, what interventions have worked best for you? As you've talked about these different things you've done, what has worked best for you and why?
Well, I don't know, interventions. I don't know if there's any real interventions or anything. I've been studying PTSD, and again, from when the VA talked, and I did talk to a doctor, and like I said, trying to get into counseling and wanting to help people. I feel like kind of through learning PTSD that kind of understanding that helps me. I'm not sure if that's an intervention or anything.
What have you learned most about your PTSD?
Well, it's like they say, I guess bottling things up or not talking, and that's why, trying to come to counseling and do those things and talking through those things is helpful, and more importantly is to get some of those things out in the open before they really do become problems. I think that's probably the biggest things that I've kind of learned out of kind of identifying and looking at PTSD.
Excellent. What to do now, you've had a chance to listen to Scott, talk a little bit about some of his symptoms. You know that he's currently not in treatment. You know what best type of treatment there is. I'd like you to work in pairs right now for the next couple of minutes. And if you have additional questions for Scotty, you can ask. Once you get the counseling agenda out, and fill at the very, very bottom that creating, after you evaluate the situation, You know what the definition of PTSD, I think it's quite obvious. And also let you know that Scotty has taken the checklist prior to coming today. He scored in the high 70s. And also, which, he took this again as well. We went and met with the counselor, and it was still well above 50 at that time. So obviously, you probably need some counseling, get that score down below 50. Okay, so let's work together in pairs and come up with a good plan, a good intervention, specifically tailored to Scotty to overcome his symptoms. Which intervention, what form of counseling is best?
Is there one that jumps out at you?
Yeah, maybe the introduce your replay anxiety, the can extinguish your local conditions.
No, I think for sure, I think he needs to do some
Really good
restructure. He needs to make a different ending. He needs to relive that and get a new reality, I think, that would be good. I don't
Yeah.
think the coping skills there is the best, because in the military, you know, they're taught mind over matter, keep it to yourself,
Oh,
or
yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I think he
So
needs
a way
to
that
get
you can
past that.
Get that out of him.
So, maybe,
Yeah, that's a good one.
I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah,
If he was to,
journaling.
maybe keep a journal, do you
Stress
think that would be a
management,
good
exposure
thing?
based.
Yeah.
Spiritual
Keep a
development,
mini
he says,
journal.
maybe
And
that's a
then we
third
could share that with
outlier.
the counselor. I think that would be a way for him to
Something different.
pull it out instead of just keeping it
Yeah,
inside, do you
yeah.
think? So I think, let's say,
Yeah,
the
It's
journal,
like
I believe,
it's-
critical incident.
Believes I doesn't go to church, but yeah. But yeah, that's awesome.
I'm not sure that's.
And I do think he would
He may not be
definitely
interested,
benefit
right?
from
Yes,
Seems like
I
he'd not be
definitely
interested
do.
in that one, right?
restructuring the CBT.
So
I think that would definitely do him some good to just
Maybe the coping skills.
come up with a different reality, because you know, our
That's
mind can
actually
remap
good, yeah.
things, which would be a great
So should
coping,
we-
but I think mind over matter, I
Mhm.
think he's lived that too long.
Okay, let's wrap this up.
That's a good one.
So.
And listen, I think, Dave, I'd like to have you represent your group and Marilyn, yours,
Oh, okay.
and kind of address this to Scotty, and Scotty can make any comments to the specific intervention, whether he thinks it'll be successful for him, whether he thinks that will work. So Dave, what did you come up with as an intervention with your group?
Well, I thought we looked at all five and thought that an integrated approach is gonna be a good approach for Scotty to look at a couple different things. First of all, with the critical incident stress management, helping him journal and get some of that anxiety out of him.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of tell how it's, we can see how it still affects you, and we would couple that with some exposure-based therapy. Introduce some anxiety to help lessen your emotional response to it. So it maybe
Very good.
deal on confronting some of those physiological responses. And then maybe as a third, not one of the primary, but coping skills. I mean, we kind of saw that with the stress management as the first, so just finding a way to on a day-to-day basis, so that when you do talk about it, we can visibly see your response to it. So, more of the stress management and the exposure-based therapy, but a little bit of coping skills to support those efforts.
What do you think, Scotty?
Yeah, no, I think good. I think like the journal, like writing things down and stuff, and then, finding ways that maybe I can deal with it. I don't know if I really want to see images or things of the same stuff again. That kind of makes me, that kind of bugs me, but I
So
think.
that remapping can help maybe take those images out. We can
Okay.
replace those images with something else.
Okay.
All right, so you don't have to relive that all the time. And that's what this remapping and relearning is all about, is how can we edit your memory of that so it's a better experience for you, so you don't have to relive those negative things all the time.
Okay, yeah, no, I'd be willing to try it, yeah, thank you, I appreciate that.
Marilyn?
We totally agree with that. We think that the critical incident stress management, keeping a journal, I think is really good. He needs to get that out. And the CBT, because that does remap your mind. You can relive things, but then you can change the outcome. You can see things differently. And that's that's a very powerful way to do it. But I think we felt like he needed to be in group counseling first. Meet as a group and then go into some individualized, so he can bounce it off others and kind of relate it that way.
How do you feel about that?
No, I think that's good. I mean, that's some of the things I've been trying to do and why I'm coming here and kind of seeking some of that counseling. Again, I'm hoping that I can help other people by doing that and at the same time kind of help myself.
Perfect. Let's go to the next slide if we could. Again, just to reiterate our 3 learning objectives on what those are. And Dave, you know what the interventions are? Let's go to the next one. Okay. Now, define PTSD.
There's a threat of death. You said 3 things: the threat of death, injury, and sexual violations.
Perfect. And Marilyn, what are the top symptoms? The treatment plan?
Denial, anxiety, and flashbacks, lack of
Okay.
sleep.
The form of treatment that you think would be best?
I'm really thinking that he might need a little bit of medication to help bring his anxiety down, help him get a good night's sleep, and then work on the CBT,
In the group counseling
yeah,
session.
group counseling session, definitely.
Fantastic. And the learning objective, one more time, as far as the intervention, the primary one that you came up with, just kind of give me the wave thoughts.
Definitely he needs counseling in group therapy with somebody who is trained in CBT.
Okay. Very good, on the interventions that you discussed. Well done. Okay, last slide. All right. Read this one if you could, just to yourself. Only the dead have seen the end of war by Plato. We can bring that to an end. We can ensure that we can reduce that 22 down to 21, 20. Less lives are being lost. Improve the well-being of people's lives through the intervention and counseling process. Thank you very much for your assistance today.